parts, finding a way to be happy with oneself and to be compassionate and able to share that with others, those are really critical elements of one's personal evolution. And I kind of, went through, I think it's important not to be so sterile. I mean, I try to, I don't want to say rock the boat exactly, but a little bit, And I think you don't have to be like ascetic. You don't have to live in a cave in order to be a spiritual person. You can still be outgoing. You can still be very social. You can still have a strong social energy, sexual energy. I think that those things are important. And when you see people really embracing that, being in one sense iconic with that, I always am drawn to that. I always think that that's a very elevated way to be, where in some cases other people don't get it. To me, it's a higher vibration to be able to function in what other people may see as two contradictory states of being. And so for you, having that, 1 foot in each planet, has that been complicated for you in any way?
Oh, absolutely. Completely. I mean, I think it's been one of my biggest personal challenges. We have challenges, all of us have challenges, different challenges, but this was my own personal challenge because I really was categorized most of my life and put into one kind of slot for people that would meet me because my looks say something completely different than my personality. So growing up, I remember my closest friends who I still have my closest friends from elementary school. I mean, in that's something so, rare these days, but I still do. And my girlfriends used to say to me that they used to have to defend me. People would say, oh, I'm sure she's just a spoiled blonde who looks a certain way and comes from this. And they'd say, no, you don't understand. This girl's got such depth and she's so spiritual and she's so grounded and she comes from a different place. I feel like I had to fight for that for most of my life because people are judgmental. People do judge books by their covers. And, I mean, maybe as of today, we are getting better. We're teaching our children different lessons, and the schools are, educating children on don't judge the book on the cover and, trying to embrace all different kinds of people. But as for me, growing up, I didn't grow up in that generation, and I always really had to fight for, hey, look at me. I'm not just a dumb blonde. I'm really smart, and I'm really grounded, and you can't. I had to fight for what was on the inside because the outside used to take over.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really powerful concept. And Shannon, when Shannon comes on the second hour, has dealt with the same thing. I mean, Shannon's like Mensa smart, but she's also a pinup model, and a lot of people don't make that connection. And I think it's too bad, too. And this is one of the things that I want to talk about with you, that women who are attractive and who try to go into corporate America or go into the workplace in some way, that aren't taken seriously for their intellectual power, for the skill sets that they bring to the table, that becomes this, if you look like this, you can't be smart, or it's very stereotypical. And one of the things that I think is important in your work, as I perceive your work, Karen, is the things that you do from a teaching standpoint to try to help women to move through that, just as experiences that you've had. So I want to throw this question out to you, if I may. When you think about working with women, and a woman has had similar experiences to you, and maybe hasn't really come to terms with that, what would you do to help her? I mean, is that a fair question? I mean, what are some of the things that you might point out to her to help her really embrace her own sense of self and her own sense of power and not let those stereotypes drag her down?
I'm doing it now. I have, I've been blessed with 3 children, 2 daughters and a son. And My oldest daughter, who's going to be 18 this year, we've worked really, really hard on that because she is the smart girl. She is the smart girl at school, and the very pretty girl. And it's brutal. I have to tell you, if it were somebody that was my peer, I think it would be easier to talk to somebody. I mean, it takes time. Self-esteem is something that takes a lot of time to build if you don't have it. And with the kids, with the peer pressure and the social dynamics that are happening in school now, which was different than even when I went to school, I think it was in my days it was much easier, even though the stereotype didn't feel so good when they were doing it. I mean, that you fall into this category or this category. For my kids, the social pressures and peer pressures are much harder for the girls. I happen to have two daughters, and I say this, not in a bad way, but I mean, they're beautiful, and they're also the top of the class. So they've got that beauty, and they've got those brains, and that is very threatening. And sometimes I find with girls that they squash their light, so that one part of them isn't so strong. So maybe they'll kind of pretend maybe they're not as smart, maybe not do as well at school, or maybe they'll pretend they'll kind of minimize their looks and not embrace who they are. That's the big thing, is not embracing who you are. So for me, what do I tell my daughters? I work very hard every single day, and part of why I wrote that blog and started Buddha Barbie, now that we're coming around full circle, is for my daughters, so that they can see a role model that is a beautiful woman and who has embraced it. I'm not embarrassed of it, but I'm also, by the same token, smart and intelligent, and I can roll with the best of them, spiritual-wise, and they see that. And funny enough, I think that has really been a wonderful role model for them.
No, that's beautiful. I mean, it's very complicated. I agree with what you're saying, too, that women tend to downplay being too good. Not all women, but a lot. And I think it's because they just get tired of fighting. And that's a cultural parameter that sets that up for them. And I'm going to kind of throw this question out to you. So for women who have maybe taken the path that they've suppressed some element of who they are, they have like a 150 IQ and they become, whatever. They try to hide that. Or they very common for women who gain weight because they're trying to have a buffer. They can't deal with the attention they get, and lots of times that's a way of trying to downplay their strength because they don't want the unwanted attention because they can't control that. So in the context of Buddha Barbie, and before we get any further, if I may, but Karen, let people know how they can find you online. If they want to find your blog or find out more about you or contact you, Karen, what's the best way for them to do that?
The best way is to go to my actual site, which is BuddhaBarbie.com, or they can find me on Facebook at Buddha Barbie, and they can find me on Instagram at Buddha Barbie, but with 2 E's on the end, and on Twitter. All of those places. I'm all over the place.
That's good. And getting back to women who maybe are older, who have gone through, maybe in high school, they didn't have a lot of help. And I mean, this is really probably my world, talking to women that have this background too, that haven't had help, that haven't been able to embrace their essence and have watered down who they are. And the reason that I wanted to have you and Shannon specifically was because I think that you have had to deal with that, but have found a way to step into the authentic you pretty strongly. But for those who may not have that, so have not had that path, have not come as far along that path, what are some things that you might say to them to help them keep going, to really kind of find a way to get into a stronger sense of self?
Well, okay, there's a two-part answer to this. The first part is that I think that we all have to deal with it at some point. It just depends on what time in our lives we have to deal with it. Some women deal with it when they have to get divorced. Some women deal with it when they find that their children have moved out and they're alone with their spouses and there's nobody to take care of. Some women feel it when they find that their husbands are cheating on them. I mean, there are so many different ways, but I think that in all of our ways, in every woman's life, and I'm sure a man's life, but we're talking about women, there comes a time where we kind of have that moment where we either have to go to the next level and somehow be challenged with facing that, or just kind of staying where we are at. We all have our choices, either to elevate or to stay where we're at. What I would tell women and what I write about is really very, I don't write as much about my personal life as I do about my social and ethical and moral views and my opinions on things. It's not about what I did last Saturday night. It's more about how I feel about life, my own perspective. And sometimes writing that, I'm speaking to the woman that I think might be reading that because she might be facing that, or she, might need to learn how to embrace her own opinions and find her voice. It's very hard. It's very hard in some circumstances. Some women never find their voice, Auntie. I mean, it's true. But I would tell women to find something they believe in, a passion, something strong that they can go on that makes them feel alive and build from there. That would be the first thing I would tell them. The second thing would be to really take time to think about who they are. We change as women, and many times in our lives we change from, young tweens to teenagers to young adult women to mothers. We become, to wives. We're always changing. Women are always changing into another facet, another hat. So I would tell, somebody who was my peer, depending on what challenge that they were having, I'd give them some ways that they could find their voices. And then hopefully reading some of the stuff that I write gives them the ability to maybe they can identify with something, and from there they can build upon themselves.
No, it's beautiful. Are you doing any kind of workshops or anything like that now?
Not yet. I hope to. I've been thinking about it for the last couple of days, actually. Eventually, I'd like to have some sort of workshop, either for women or actually for, I was thinking it even for my daughter's age. But that's been something I've been really thinking about, because strengthening your identity and embracing, those are big things, and they set you up for the next stage of your life.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I remember my daughter's 23, and I remember when Rihanna was, 10th grade, 16, 17, and similar. I mean, she was in a kind of a fancy suburb in Ohio. You're in a fancy, area in Michigan. I mean, we have similar sort of things, right? And the young girls, it was unbelievable to me the kinds of things that they went through as young girls. This is 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
Horrible. It's horrible.
Sets of expectations and being pushed into, young girls are sexualized and all these things when they're 10. It's very confusing, I think. And I think what we do to young children now, I've written about this for years, and what we do to young children has to be very confusing for them, right? And so especially for young girls trying to still be, a child and having all this stuff